Welcome to the show tonight. François Hollande is on a mission at the moment to show that he is a man you can do business with. 30 heads of foreign companies were at the Elysée Palace to hear about France's attractiveness to the business world. The French president pledged to guarantee that taxes on an investment would not rise later and that VAT and duty rules for firms would be streamlined this year. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
France is open to the world and we are an attractive country for business. We are not afraid of companies who come to invest in France, and we do not want to protect ourselves from this.
Well, to talk about the charm offensive, I'm joined tonight here in the studio by Valérie Rabault, who is a member of Parliament and a Socialist, also the Vice President of the National Financial Commission at the Assembly. Thank you for being with us. Also here is Thomas Serval, who is the founder Flaminem with us as well. Also, Emeric, Ernoult, founder of AgoraPulse, and Thibault, Dornon, Vice President of Génération Libre. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for being with us. First of all, before we get the debate going, let's have a look at the government's wider charm offensive to the business world.
François Hollande is continuing the charm offensive. The heads of 30 companies that include Siemens, Volvo, GE and Nestlé are at the Elysée Palace for what's being called a Council of Attractiveness. The companies invited have combined annual revenues of 850 billion euros, and the president is hoping he can convince them to invest more in France.
There are 20,000 foreign companies in France. They employ over 2 million workers, and this accounts for 30% of our annual exports.
On Sunday evening, the company heads met with the French Prime Minister. The government is trying hard to improve its image, an image marred by one of Europe's highest labour costs, and a reputation for government interference in business deals, like preventing Yahoo's takeover of Daily Motion. Currently, 75% of the foreign companies present in France are from Europe, followed by 20% from the United States. The remaining come from Canada, Japan and emerging markets. The objective of the Council is to increase levels of foreign investment by 40% in the next 3 years and see 300 new companies set up in France each year. In an effort to make this happen, the President is likely to offer fast-track visas and simplified customs procedures.
First of all, we're going to go around the table and see what you all think about this. It is the case that if François Hollande is focusing on bringing investment back to France, it is simply because foreign investment over the last few months has fallen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why?
I think it's decreased like 77% or something.
Why do you believe that's the case?
I think it's a long-standing situation where employment is too rigid. Taxes seems to be unstable, and the tax systems is looked at as an unstable system by foreign countries and foreign investors. And when you start investing in a country and get a couple of change in the laws and it affects you, then you make a decision to move away. And once you've made that decision, it's for good for a long time. And I think that instability has played a pretty important role in the way they see us as an investment country.
The point is that there is a big question of perception, and the fact is that from outside, France is simply not perceived as business-friendly.
Well, I think France has a reputation as not a very business-friendly country. And in fact, we have to take care of France as a brand. And as in any brand policy, we have to be careful of the perception abroad. And I believe that, well, American people, for example, they see France, and the CEO of Titan wrote a letter to Arnaud Montebourg saying that the business image of France was terrible in the US and that we needed to address this as quickly as possible. So I think this is more of an issue of, as you said, Emeric, tax policy in the long run, tax strategy, labor laws, and also reputation and business reputation.
We have another entrepreneur on the table, is of course Thomas Serval. You are described, in fact, in my brief as a serial entrepreneur. What is your take on the problem with France at the moment?
Well, I just returned from San Francisco when I was also visiting at the same time as President Hollande. And the one thing is, like, if you are an American investor at the moment, you have the world is offering you opportunities to invest. And so why should you choose France? And that's where we actually have a problem of competitive advantage, because of course the perception is bad, but sometimes, especially in the world of technology where I am, deals goes fast. And doing business in France takes more time than on average. It takes more time to be paid than in Germany. It takes more time to get a visa. So one of the things that truly is a true business matter is how fast can you do business in France versus how fast can you do business in other countries. And we are not talking about fundamentals. We just say, I have an opportunity in this country, in Germany or in the UK, it will take me 2 months to get a deal closed, in France 6 months. For whatever reason, that's basically the reality. And that's what it's not about the politicians and the politics also that we need to change. It's like, how can we get more responsive in a very, very competitive world?
I'd like to put that to Valérie Rabault. There is the question of the perception, and we'll move on to that later. But there is, of course, just the fact of the slowness. If we begin with that, just the difficulty, the steps, the hoops you have to jump through to get things done. People are obviously going to look elsewhere.
I agree on two items, and I do not agree with you. Actually, it's true that it takes time in France to have business or deals closed very quickly, for plenty of reasons, not just only one. And it's true that it takes too much time and it needs to be corrected. We know that for a long time. I think through the proposal that have been made today, it goes in the good direction to reduce the time to have businesses or deals closed. The second one, and I fully agree with you, there is an issue on perception. I'm always surprised. I have worked in Hong Kong, in the US, and also in the UK. So I think I can draw some comparison between all the businesses. And France is the third one worldwide for innovation. For innovation, that means something, not just to have we have a strong innovation in the country. Third one, with 13% of worldwide innovation. Germany has 1%. So no one knows that, no one, and it has been made by Reuters agency, so it's not me, it's an American agency who has drew some comparison between the different countries. And I think this type of perception, we need to be proud of it, and we need to, I think, to leverage on it, which is not the case today. Now there is the question on the taxation and etc. Maybe France is not very good at marketing because we see a rate which is 33%. I've heard 38%, but 38% multiplied by 0 is 0. And we have big companies reducing actually on the amount of money on which the tax are computed. So I agree with you, but when we compare the amount of taxation that are perceived from the companies in France compared to the other European country, we are in the average.
I'd like to move on to the question of taxes a little bit later and slightly separately. If we could begin, as they did at the Elysée Palace, they'd separated into 3 nice parts. Let's do the same. The first is accessibility. François Hollande wants to convince foreign companies that the French market is accessible, despite the problem of the reputation that you allude to, the fact that France has been the subject of a great deal of French bashing by the Anglo-Saxon press over the months. People have also heard the truth, the facts, the story about Arnaud Montebourg preventing Dailymotion from being sold, etc. I mean, this myth is also based on facts. It is going to be very difficult to convince people that France has the right business environment.
Yeah, but if I may just, because you mentioned Dailymotion, I remember it was in 2006 or 2007, there was a Chinese company which wanted to buy an American company, and the Congress said no. And everyone was happy with that. Now, Arnaud Montebourg is doing exactly the same thing, exactly. Oh, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Is there some truth in that?
Actually, I used to run YouTube for Google for Europe, so I kind of
You're the man to ask.
a little biased view of it. But my take on this is, and we don't have all the information, at least all the public information, is whether the Dailymotion deal was a good deal or not. And my perception is it was probably not.
Not a good deal for France.
For France and for Dailymotion. But the fact that the politicians, and I'm saying this as a branding and marketing, has expressed instead of a business people that it was not a good deal, I think that was a marketing mistake. Because
the fact that politicians should have got involved.
No, I don't think it's for a minister to tell whether a deal should be done or not when it's on non-governmental issues. And the perception for the Anglo-Saxon has been terrible, not because of whether the Dailymotion deal was going to be happening or not. I think it's a mistake we shouldn't do again from a marketing perspective of letting a politician say, I'm vetting this deal. And that's
when the American Congress saying exactly the same thing, it was in 2006 or 2005. And everyone was happy with that. Everyone.
Yeah, but if I may say so, one of the biggest strengths of France is the European Union.
Yes,
and we have taken down trade barriers in the European Union, and I think that has improved business quite a lot. And I believe that we have to build on that. So we have to give credit where credit is due, and we have a good environment for business insofar as the trade barriers have been taken down by Europe. So what we owe to Europe, we should give back to Europe and not take it from France. So when Arnaud Montebourg acts as a protectionist, it is first anti-European and two, anti-business.
And it is not the only time that it's happened. Arnaud Montebourg has been at the origin of a number of terrible headlines in the outside world about how France runs its economy. I think of ArcelorMittal, for instance.
I think Arnaud Montebourg is the worst marketer the country has ever had. And that's one thing I agree with you, is marketing. Politics are very bad at doing marketing. And this whole thing is an image thing. It's a perception thing. We've said that. And the way we're perceived by the Americans, and I work with Americans every day, and I talk to them every day, and they're my friends, so they tell me how they feel about France and the country and how they perceive it. And most of it is not true. Most of it is distorted, and it's distorted because their vision it's gone through the media, through the Montebourg thing, and through, they don't want Yahoo to buy their companies, they're just protecting them and stuff like that. And this is obviously not going the right direction, even though everything they're doing, like what they've done today, which I think is a very good idea. It does not impact me as a small business very much because it seems to be targeted at bigger businesses and at investors coming to France and not French businessmen doing business in France. But I think it's always a good idea to try to work this out and to present that situation in a better position.
So there is Valérie Rabault, this question of perception, but there are these problems with the messages that have been sent out over the course of the years, and threatening to nationalize industries that have set up in France was clearly never going to be a good idea.
We need to be careful on that. When General Motors, it was in 2005, has been nationalized in the US by Obama, again, everyone was happy. Everyone. And in France, it has not been done. It has been mentioned, or it was an idea in the debate, and everyone said, oh, France is not business friendly. That's not true. That's not true at all. And I agree with you that we need to make strong progresses on marketing of all what has been decided, because perception is could be, yes, perception is difficult today. I agree with you.
Listen to yourself for a second. When you say that to an American investor, you say, well, nationalizing business is not necessarily a bad idea.
No.
What I said, USSR and the Soviet bloc. You go like, okay, so they're going to take my business from me.
What I said is when a business is in difficulty, as it was at General Motors, and it was the same for Mittal. It was Mittal. You can call it public investment.
Yeah, I think it's better
in
branding.
the US, you call it, I remember the word, it was in the newspapers, nationalist, takeover. Takeover is a nationalization.
Well, not
exactly. If it's made by the states, it's a nationalization. Call it like you want, but we need, today, we have differences or discrepancies between the way it is the approach in the US and the approach in France. But I agree with you that we need, on taxation, we need to be clear on which is the amount each company is paying. And it is not 33%, it is not 38% as well.
And if I may, I think for especially investors, let's take US investors, most of the people are long-term investors, which means that they have the savings and loan. The big money that comes even from the US are the savings and loans from retiring people, etc. So this money has to find places to stay on the long run. And the problem when you want money to stay for a long run is you need to have predictability and visibility. And if France has been wrong the last 10 years, is if I was 10 years ago, and I wanted to predict in which state France's tax system will be, I will have no way to predict and forecast. And that's
it is a question then of the instability of the fiscal system rather than the actual amounts involved.
Instability of the fiscal system and predictability of the government reaction. If you say, whenever I'll be in this situation, it can be up to the nationalization level, that's what's going to happen, that's the way things are going to work, then at least business people can make decisions based on facts and rational decision. The fact that it is very hard for people to act upon right now, especially from the US or Anglo-Saxon investor, is they cannot predict. We obviously show cultural differences. Look at us investing in China, or look at us investing in Northern Africa or in Africa. We look as different. And being different, we are not predictable. And when you have the choice between something where you know what's going to happen and something where you don't know, it's a risk assessment. You go where you, even if it's more risky, you can assess. In France, you cannot assess the risk you're taking. And that's the biggest problem we are facing right now.
It seems to be one of the ones that François Hollande wants to address. He pledged, amongst other things today, to guarantee that taxes on an investment would not rise later. So presumably that goes precisely in the sort of direction you're talking about. And while we're on taxes, he promised last month, of course, to phase out 30 billion euros in charges on company by 2017. What do you make of that?
Well, I make of that you don't hand out money like that without a long-term strategy. And what we need is for companies, as you said, who invest in long run with people they're trying to attract, like high net worth individuals. You need to have a strategy in the long run and be able to say, well, down in 5 years' time, I will pay this much in taxes. And this is the yield I'm going to get from France, considering the infrastructure and the social choices you make, of course. But you need to know better. And I believe that the main difference in the fiscal policies between France and Germany is that in Germany it is simple, accessible, readable and stable in the long run. And this is what we need to take inspiration from, is that no matter the rules in themselves, in a way, just like make them stable.
Okay. Like I might give you just an example. We discussed this in San Francisco. Long-term capital gain. At the moment, if you're a startup, long-term capital gain are lower by 10% in France than they are in the US. No people in California would ever believe it, but we checked the latest measure from Fleur Pellerin after the pigeon story. It's like long-term capital gain is 10% lower than the one you can get out of California.
It's true. And so no one would make the mistake of staying in
France.
France.
No one knows, but even if you tell them, even when you tell them, they say yes, but it might change.
So it is the question of instability that you raise then.
Both systems. We don't market our advantages, and then later on, we also, even if we market them, people have a little doubt about those guys are a little crazy. What are they going to invest?
We're going to come back to that in just a moment. It is 28 minutes past 7, and in a moment it'll be the second part of tonight's debate. Do stay with us.